Welcome to the Neurogenic Integration Podcast, where we explore the incredible potential of neurogenic tremoring beyond the basics. I'm Alex Green.
And I am Sivia Songshields. Together, we'll be diving into how this natural, innate process can be seen and applied across different professions, healing modalities, and in scientific research.
Whether you're a practitioner, a coach, a therapist, a body worker, or a researcher, this podcast is for you.
Join us as we uncover the science, share experiences, and explore how neurogenic integration is revolutionizing the way we approach stress, trauma, and well-being.
So take a breath, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be sitting down this evening for me, and it's morning for Simba. But once again, having my second recorded podcast conversation with Simba Stenqvist, based in Chiang Mai, Thailand, or somewhere in that general area, originally from Sweden. And Simba is a diverse background in bodywork and martial arts training and fascial work. He's a fellow TRE practitioner and trainer, certification trainer. And so this is how we originally crossed paths, is in the TRE world. And in our previous conversation last year, we got to hear about just Simba's journey and of moving to Thailand and starting his business, Living with Spirit, and some of the healing retreats that he hosts and facilitates in Thailand, and blending different practices, traditional and modern nervous system practices, and psychoeducation with the polyvagal theory, and all these wonderful things. So that's what was in our last conversation. But today, what I'm really hoping to explore with Simba is just sort of in some ways where he's going as a teacher and educator and practitioner. And he recently announced, as sort of an extension of his work, maybe combining some of his background in modalities into a new modality, something called Internal Alchemy, which in some ways is taking some of the elements of TRE and neurogenic tremoring in, as I understand it, which is not very well yet, but that's the purpose of the conversation, in combination with some other perspectives in the deep work that Simba's been doing over 25 years. Mostly, we're going to be hearing about what this new project is all about for Simba. And I also want announcing that we're lucky that we've invited Simba to lead a workshop for the neurogenic integration community, leading a workshop in June. Let me check the date. I think it's June 18th, about a 2-hour workshop. The title of it is "The Body is the Portal: An Introduction to Internal Alchemy." And so we are excited to have him as a guest facilitator, just teaching about his methods and all of that. So anyway, Simba, so happy to connect with you again, and thanks for taking time to tell us what you are up to.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and it's so great to be back here again. It's always nice to talk to you, and I just feel like we can talk forever, like we have the same kind of passion and interest for these things. Basically, the internal alchemy for me was, I met David in person a year and a half ago, and I was discussing about my wish to innovate TRE and how I am as a person, how I've always been, that I always respect. I come from traditional martial arts background. I always respect the lineages that are there, but respecting a lineage for me also means you bring it forward, because whatever you're practicing, martial arts or whatever philosophy you're doing, I believe for you to be successful for yourself and to help others also needs to be contemporary. So it needs to have values that's respecting the lineage, that are timeless, but it also
Yeah.
needs to adapt with what is the need that people have right now. So if we look at something like yoga, okay, people maybe weren't sitting down 8 hours a day when they designed it. They weren't on smartphones, they weren't on internet. So you can still practice yoga respecting the whole lineage, but you have
Mm.
to understand that what people need today is a bit different. So that was basically the initial inquiry to innovate this modality befitting people that might come for different reasons. They might have different backgrounds, kind of like we do have in theory. We have modifications if someone can't do the exercises and so on. But what
Yeah.
I also started to realize is that I have a lot of other modalities that I practice, teach, and train for years. And David was like, well, weave them into theory, like,
Hmm.
see what we can do. So I started
Hmm.
exploring doing a lot of that over the years and had great results for myself and with many other clients. And that was really the birthing idea for
Right.
Internal Alchemy. But it didn't really come from a mental concept. So it wasn't, I'm going to do a modality. It kind of came through me, right? I started to see this symbol. I started to get these ideas that just came when I was meditating. And it feels more like it came through me rather than I thought it out and started to put it together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the background, I would say, of how this modality started. It really started with a curiosity and inquiry to expand and to be modern and to be able to help people continue the exploration.
Yeah. Well, I really resonate with that idea of what you're sharing about, yeah, keeping the tradition alive, or alive and matching your own authentic explorations. And I mean, it fits, as I've shared with you, my own curiosities around how does tremoring fit with, in the Rolfing structural integration environment. What does it have to offer in a craniosacral therapy environment? What's the connection with the Feldenkrais movement? And it's a little similar to you, the birthing of neurogenic integration as a community and project. I don't call it we don't call it a modality, as more of just a project, but the project of neurogenic integration is uh, exploration. I see it as exploration into how does tremoring, what is the connection? If you do breath work, if you do fascial work, if you look at it not only from a neurobiological lens, but if you include, let's say, an energy anatomy lens, which I think we're going to talk about with you. So in any case, I feel so much resonance with uh, what you're sharing, that you sort of felt, okay, what's my expression or what's my authentic exploration of this? So I'm so excited about hearing more about your work with this.
I agree, and I know we have a lot of similarities in the way of looking at things and exploring. And I also have a craniosacral background.
Right.
One of the main things that I feel with this modality is I will pre-record a lot of theory, and of course, when people show up for the trainings, we will go through theory and practical exercises. But the main thing of teaching it is, I want to say old school, but more who's in front of me. What do they need? There is basic fundamentals that everyone needs, especially if you're going to be a practitioner, criterias to finish a training. But I think within those criterias, what I'm aiming to teach is to work with people from where they're at, and not so much like a school system. You're going to learn this, and then you're going to learn this, and then you're going to learn that, right? It's not going to be linear in that sense. And I believe that's fair because you don't know who's going to show up. The same as when you teach theory. Maybe I can't teach all the exercises. Maybe I need to do grounding 2-3 times with the person before I can even approach what we call the tremoring part of the session.
Sure.
So a big part of teaching the modality is coming back to that, really working with who is in front of me and what do they need. And when you do that in a group, you actually get to see almost like the old osteopathic trainings. They used to go to an osteopath and just see cases after cases after
Yep.
cases, and that's how
Yeah.
they started to learn. So this is
Right.
something similar that you will learn a lot by doing. Of course, you will learn the theory. I will go through the energy, but
Right.
it's going to be less. This is what you're going to get in the training. You're going to get what you need when you arrive there, and we're going to explore these different areas. But what you get depends on what the person and the group needs. That's why I think each and every training is going to be very different, and it's going to be very
Mm.
interactive, and you're really going to get what you come for. And that's usually when I look at trainings and myself and the trainees, we want to learn how to teach this professionally, but ultimately we come for our own healing, right? And that's the
Right.
gateway to then give back to others.
I love that. I love the language of who's in front of you. Because again, okay, yeah, we whatever modality you have you might have a protocol, whether it's yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. The um, any teaching in it usually has a structure, but you're applying that structure to a unique the living, breathing person, human being that's with you there. So really, the reminder of that I like a lot. I resonate a lot with. I wonder if you could share. It's like
Yeah.
paint a picture. It's like give us some examples of of even from your own experience and as you're meeting someone and what's guiding you in in working with that if the individual. So yeah, talk about that process a little bit if you would.
Of course, the way that I teach anything, theory or internal alchemy, really starts with your connection to your own grounding and your own embodiment, that you can connect to the feeling of your body. Not that I feel off, I need to go ask someone what's wrong with me, that I can
Right.
develop that communication with my own body. So that's
Mm.
really the core philosophy of how I teach grounding, self-regulation, and anything. And that's
Mm.
the main element that I will start to teach people how to explore for themselves, but also how to explore in dynamics with others in one-on-one sessions and groups. So whether
Mm.
that's like we do in craniosacral therapy, the physical touch where you kind of learn how to lead and follow very gently,
Listening and yeah,
listening, receiving, giving
yeah.
suggestions. So that's a big part of what I will be aiming to do, to develop those skills for yourself, but also in congruency with others or in concert with others. We'll see what happens the 18th of June, the workshop we're going to do, but the body is the portal. I have a feeling that it's going to be a lot of fascia, and that's something that I'm going to incorporate into the modality in general. And to give you an idea practically, when we stretch, you feel a good sensation in your muscle, or when you lift out, you get this pump and you feel good. But once you start to go into fascia work, you can be wiped. You can go deep into having a strong emotional reaction, whether that's happiness, sadness, or joy, because ultimately you tap into the whole structure that carries everything in our body. So when you practically go in and do different fascia maneuvers and work with the fascia, right? It's like taking a towel and rinsing it. Whatever's stuck in the tissue will come out.
Mm.
So that's something that I want to do for people to start to experience something beyond the intellectual concept of what is it that we're doing. You start to feel it, you learn how to regulate what it is that comes up for you, and the body will, many times, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it when you do fascia work, many times the body will start to show you, why do I have pain here? Why do I feel like I do? It's almost like a role play. It starts to try to show you a movement or
Sure.
so. A lot of the work I'm going to focus on is teaching people how to get into that state themselves and helping others And
Mm.
I believe that combined with what we call the tremors from the nervous system, which I think is just one part of the shaking mechanism, because there's
Right.
energetical components to it. You have a lot of different reasons for why the body's tremoring. But what I
Right.
practically do when I teach is to work with this felt sense so you can feel what is your body trying to tell you. Work with the fascia structure because it's connected to everything. It comes from the cellular level and out, and you get these personal
Sure.
experiences. And we do a lot of breathing exercises because it connects to the conscious and subconscious mind, and every breath, every motion, every thought has a unique breathing pattern. So once you start to become aware and breathe together with these kind of exercises, you get a very deep pathway into your body. You get like a very deep channel into what you many times can't see with your intellectual mind. And then what I also like to add, like you mentioned, is the energetical components, which many times can feel abstract, especially if we're kind of gearing a little bit more towards the scientific and we're like, no, what is this? But I want to do it in a tangible way. So when I look at this
Okay.
modality, you can do breath work, you can do fascia work, you can do all of these things. What I'm looking is to combine them all into a way where you really get to have a powerful tool to communicate with your body, with other people's body, but also giving other people's body a way of expanding beyond the framework of the nervous system
Right.
and beyond any limitations. That you have a platform that you can go into energetics, you can go into fascia, you can go in any direction you want. But I want to give people a broad base and expand upon maybe existing skills to give them new opportunities to broaden their horizon.
Right. I love that. Um, what I'm being reminded of right now is something that I think is cool, or good news is a better way to say it. Because I'm always worried about in the field that we're in of body work, somatics, nervous system work, other things. I'm always worried about sort of silos where people stay, only in their if each discipline stays only in their discipline, then there's not an then there's then although there's overlap, there's not clear integration sometimes. And so one some good news is that every 3 years is the fascial congress, a big conference that happens somewhere in the world. And this and I forget which number they're on. It's maybe been happening for 15 years or so, and it's the people doing fascial research, Robert Schleip and Jean Berthaud, the French surgeon who takes those beautiful videos and photos of fascia. Um, but in any case, this year it's going to be in New Orleans in the United States in August. And the good news is that, so two things. One, Stephen Porges is a keynote there, so that's good. So it's a connecting between the polyvagal world of the autonomic nervous system and the fascial world, as you say, which connects to everything structurally. But as you're saying, when we engage the fascia, it's also it's not simply a structural tissue. There's the psycho-emotional, energetic component as well. So anyway, so I'm glad that link is being made. And then the second piece of good news is that a TRE provider, Lisa Kimball. Do you know Lisa?
I think I know of her, but I don't know her personally. No.
So Lisa does some fascial work with TRE and a lot with horses as well. But I think she's from South Africa, and so
Yeah, I know
she's
of
going
her.
to
Yeah.
the fascial congress, and she's going to give a pre-workshop. So before the main part of the congress, she's doing a TRE tremoring workshop. So I thought that is really good. And in fact,
Cool.
uh I'm interviewing her tomorrow, no, Saturday, I think. because I want to
Wow.
hear about what she's going to present. So anyway, I'm just thinking. I thought, oh, good. So some of these worlds are coming together, sort of usefully. Yeah. But I love this idea,
Wonderful.
Simba, of a kind of this like experiential learning, or you said kind of old school. And I know, you've mentioned your own sort of martial arts lineage, and a lot of martial arts lineages have, there's no substitution for just being with your teachers and in that immersive environment. That's similar in my own background with martial arts and Zen, and even my first bodywork teacher. It was more like learning a martial art than anything else. Um, and so I resonate a lot with that idea of, yes, there's certain theory and whatnot, but that's maybe 10% of the learning, and the rest is sort of something that is transmitted through time and experience and observation and connection. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your way of teaching, of working with students, in that more old school way.
Yeah, I think I can share a story because I think stories many times are good at explaining a philosophy. When I said old school, so one of my Thai massage teachers here, she's traveling all over Asia and in Europe, and they invite her in everywhere. She's super famous in her field. And
Mm.
when I started to taking trainings with her, learning the Chinasang and the stomach massage, I would ask her many times, what do I do with a client that has this and this thing? And she said, I have no idea. I said, but you have like 30, 40 years of experience. What are you talking about? She said, I don't know. Bring them here and I show you. So she wasn't operating from an intellectual perspective at all. I mean, I am as well,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
that was really when I started to look at teaching as, oh, that's what they call a master. Like if you go to a master, they won't give you a theoretical framework. You will come and they will teach the technique based on your body, based on your
Right.
needs, based on what is the situation about. Because if I pose a question to you, that's from my level of understanding. But maybe my level of understanding is part of why I can't see the solution because I'm coming from a bias or a trauma and so on. So a
Hmm.
big part of the way I teach people is creating a safe space for them to explore themselves, their emotions, the sensations that comes up. And I always, strive to find a balance of this is a training program. Like we're not coming only for our own healing. So there are criterias, right? Because you're actually going to be helping others.
Mm.
But at the same time, you need to have had that experience of being held in a safe space, feeling that new shifts in your nervous system that you get a new reference point, right? And and a big part of my work is to get people to a point where they realize there are choices. Like you're not stuck in a habit, you're not stuck in a trauma. You ground, you do the work to the point where you realize that there is a choice. You might not notice this choice because you have habitually done it so many times, so you don't see another way out. But once you slow everything down with the tremors, with the self regulation, working through the fascial body, your self awareness goes up and you will reframe experiences that you looked in a certain way before. So when
Mm.
people tell me, oh, please help me, guide me to look at things in this way, I said, no, that's not the work. My work is to teach people, ground them, get them to a point where they realize they have choices, and the rest is your path. What do I want to do
Mm.
with this awareness, this new experiences, this knowledge? And I believe a big part of that work is something that David taught me actually is many times our experiences is not about what happened, but it's about what happened inside of us due to what happened. But a big part of the external factor is if you have an experience and you're witnessed and you're treated in a certain way, that creates like an imprint in your nervous system. So if I don't know, I'm 5 and I'm going to go up and do a little theater performance and my pants fall down and everyone laughs and everyone feels embarrassed themselves, that's going to be an imprint in my nervous system because I'm witnessed as I'm having an experience in a certain way.
Mhm.
Many times, if you can be witnessed doing something that you're afraid of, but you're celebrated, you're held in a safe space, now we can start to reframe that experience. And I believe
Yeah.
that's a big part of the teaching that I do, that people can help themselves and others just by being grounded, by being, open, compassionate, and not come from a framework of this is right or wrong. So big part of the grounding is my teaching style, helping people reframing the experiences, slowing things down to the point where you can see that you actually have options, that you can do things differently. And then a big part is actually being witnessed. If you do public speaking, if you do something that you feel is hard, but you're received, you're accepted in that, and that starts to
Mm.
change a lot of that stuck energy. So that's a big part of how I like to teach anything.
Yeah, I love that. I'm thinking, I'm laughing a little bit to myself. There was a kind of a recent, maybe 6 months ago or something. There was a Dr. Berselli, David posted a video of him working with someone. I don't even know. I don't some group. It might have been in Indonesia with Hindra, or it might have been the New York group, the firefighters. I'm not sure, but he posted some video of him facilitating, and he helped somebody, and through a release, not only the tremoring release but also an emotional release, and then that video was posted on, like, the TRE Facebook forum, and somebody said, "Oh, well, okay, how did you know to do this or this or this?" And David's first response was one word: experience, which I thought was kind of funny. And the person kind of inquired a little bit more, and he gave a little bit of a fuller explanation. But um, I can't, I can't think of how many times. Let me put it this way: I think a frustration for David is, he's worked with so many people, and he can see, he can be present for. And I think for David, he believes, and I also believe this, but I think he believes, in a way, what he's doing is not so difficult, is not, and I think a frustration of his is that, people say, "Oh, well, how did you know this? How did you know?" He said, "Well, easy. I was just totally there with the person. I cared about them. I was curious. I was present, and I just responded as a human being. I was just a human being with a human being." And, whatever happens around that. And so to me, that's a little bit of what I hear you speaking to, is that if there's that safety in that very, very human way, and there's the witnessing and that very natural way of being with people, then then tips and tricks and an analytical eye, and these things matter very little, where that actually what's allowing for this, the going deeper for the people, is that very clear witnessing presence. And so I'm having the feeling that that's a little bit along the lines of what you're describing.
Definitely. I think a big part, like from my discussions with Berselli and my realizations, is if you're trying to intellectually understand a intuitive sense,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a bit of a block, right? Because you're trying to understand how an inhalation happens, and you actually need to look at the exhalation. So you're looking at the completely wrong aspect of what it is that you need to do to learn something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've asked them too many times, and you probably have too, when I'm next to him, and it says, well, you observe the body, you observe a lot of people do tremors, you feel your own nervous system. and you will start to pick up patterns. You will start to see things. You will start to get an idea. And if you don't know, you ask the person. So I
Yeah.
think the main thing is many people think that there is like a trick or a philosophy, but it really comes down to how well can I connect to myself, and by proxy extension of that connection to myself to another organism. And that's really what I'm seeing he's masterful at, observing bodies, connecting to people. Well, like my father is from Dominican Republic. My mother is Swedish, right? So I'm grow up with two cultures. And in Sweden, it's
Yep.
very structural and sure they're open and they're friendly, right? But they're not as
Hmm.
open as Latin Americans, right? That's a
Sure.
completely
Sure.
different climate and mentality.
Yeah.
So in Dominican Republic, the way that my father grew up is they're like, "Hey, how you doing, Alex?" And you're like, "You're a little bit grumpy." They will tease you, and you might explode on me, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on with you?" And that becomes part of the therapy, and then you explain, "Yeah, yeah, I had a fight with my wife, and come on, man, well, let's work it out. Let's do some pads, or let's run, or let's." So you kind
Yeah.
of collectively work through these things, but you don't think about
Mhm.
it because that's what we do. That's in the culture.
Yeah.
So I think you
Yeah.
can learn how to do this in a calmer way therapeutically with people uh, by you connecting to yourself and realizing what's not really flowing here. And I see David is a master of that. Really see, oh, the person wants to laugh but they don't. And it's not that you're studying someone like a profiler or trying to look at
Right.
micro gestures. You just feel that there is something that wants to come through, and you
Yeah.
give the person questions and opportunities to express that. And I believe the more you do, the freer you will feel. And a lot of the stress that I see today actually comes from the inability to be authentic, because you think someone's going to come after you or your opinion, or you're going to get bad publicity, or someone's going to put you into a fraction where you are against this person or you're against this person, or I'm pro this, or no, I just don't like this and this is what I stand for. It doesn't mean that I'm
Yeah.
against anyone. This
Yeah.
is just what's important for me. And I
Yeah.
believe a lot of what I've got from the nervous system work is, how can I stand my ground in a compassionate way that it's not me against them? I can realize where someone is coming from, but I can still be centered and rooted and grounded in myself, but in a loving way, not in a combative way, not in a, if you do this, I'm gonna do that. And I think
Hmm.
really once you get to that point and you have those experiences and you can start to teach from that point, then the way you can show up for other people and for yourself is ultimately going to change. And then you don't even know. I mean, the question might just pop up in your head and you ask the person a question and then you have a big release and someone says, "Where did the question come from?" I usually say, I just follow what was
Hmm.
available to me.
Hmm.
Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I see it, sometimes I get a feeling in my body and I ask them. And then actually it
Right.
wasn't my feeling, it was something that was mirrored body to body. So I
Right.
think it's a different kind of communication. And when I look at internal alchemy, that's a big part of what I want to teach people, is to go into that layer of communication, which is not just about nervous system, which actually has other modalities, because that's been my own personal journey. And I
Right.
believe having that framework and experiences and exercises exploring these themes, and then going into tremors or shaking or whatever we choose to call it, it's going to open up something new, because it's almost like you're prompting your body, and then the tremors opens up all the blockages for what wants to come out, for what wants to be explored and expressed. And
Mm.
that's also a big part of what I'm really excited to teach in internal alchemy, because the discussions you have, the exercises you do, and then coming into uh, the portion of tremors, it really does a big difference, but also how you look at the tremors. What is it that's actually happening? Okay, it can be
Mhm.
shaking. I can feel it in the nervous system. I can feel like a cool little wave sometimes moving through me. To be able to listen and follow these different rhythms and waves inside of your body is something that I haven't heard a lot about in the theory. And it's not that I think theory is, it's not good or bad. I still teach theory. I love it. It's changed my life. This was more, how can I make my own expression? How can I make my contribution to this family of amazing healing awareness that we have, or expressive awareness? So it really came from curiosity and more a contribution than a substitution. That's really how I see any of these modalities that are birthed from from this roots.
Yeah. Well, yeah, nicely explained. Kind of going back to this, you're this example of, David in his mastery when he's working with others, and and how he describes it. And I think you said something that I want to highlight, or because I think it's important, which is that, again, I'm going to use David as the example of the master, but I think you work this way when you're in your flow. I think I work this way when I'm in my flow. I think this is what we try to impart to our students as well. But in any case, so picturing Dave in his zone, and I'm struck that there's, in a sense, there's almost like two dimensions. One is, yes, so one is sort of the outward facing dimension of, sort of observing, yes, what is it that you see or sense or hear in the individual, or even what do they say? So what's the information that you're receiving from that organism? And then the other dimension being, and what's arising or happening within you at the level of thought, at the level of sensation, at the level of impulse. And what when I work with students, I was working with a student today, and I see them early in their journey in facilitation, and what I sometimes observe is that they start to see things, so they are asking good questions, and so they're present, they're curious, they sometimes notice things I would never notice, and I think, wow, what an amazing what a cool detail that person saw or felt. But the difference is that I think it takes time, at least for my own students, it takes time for them to not only sense, but also trust whatever's arising from within them. Because what I sometimes see is, sometimes as soon as I say, okay, well, here's the kind of thing I might have asked or suggested, or I give, I'll tell you what my own impulse would be, X, Y, this is what I would want to, this is what my impulse would be in this situation. And they say, yeah, that's, that matches. And so in some ways, what I sometimes think is that one of the things I think people learn as they become more experienced and more masterful is to not only sense and feel, but to follow their impulses and intuitions. And that's what I've really seen in Dave. Is, of course, he's seen thousands and thousands of people, so his eye is very, very sharp. He's seen many patterns, but in terms of him following his own intuition, it's like there's no hesitation, there's no gap. There's an immediacy to it, and so that's something that I've sort of have felt. So I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking about this what goes into this organism to organism interaction that comes up.
I agree, and that's a very good explanation. I believe that it's a big part of it. And that was one of the first thing he told me when I was working alongside him. He said, just sit down and watch first. Just what are we looking at? What's coming up, And I believe, I mean, I've had it, you probably had it, and you see David do it many times. You start to see a pattern and you think about it, and before you even say it, the other body has received your message, the communication, and it starts to shift and something else starts to happen. Or you just said, what would happen if, and the body goes, yep, and it just changes into that pattern. So I think that really comes from that deep sense of connection, that that organism feels that my organism is safe, and it feels that I'm clear in my communication with myself and with others. And by proxy of that, the mirror neurons, or however you choose to explain it, starts to learn, and there's an opening. It's an allowance. It's like the vicarious modeling. Oh, we can do like that. Interesting. So I think that is a big part of what I learned and what I like to teach, in theory, and what I think could call masterful once you really start to learn that. But the self-regulation for yourself, how doing the work for yourself actually makes others feel better, how it's not selfish or egotistical, but taking care of yourself first to the level where you feel this good, just you being yourself in that essence. It's going to teach other people how they can be by you being yourself. And I think David's a great example of that, because when he just shows up to a session, I remember first podcast I did with him, my jaw was tremoring, and I was like, what's going on? I've done theory for quite some time now. I was talking, and it was like, it started to tremor. So just being in his presence, my body started to release something, and I think that's what you can achieve the more you practice this modality. You just feel that your body wants to release something, or you see a very fit and inspiring person and you want to exercise when you see them. You get this communication body to body by what you put in and what you cultivate in yourself. And that's really what I think seasoned practitioners do. They have that understanding, that allowance, and they're very open for that. So their mere presence allows for something to come through that maybe isn't available as easy in our own day-to-day lives, with limitations, belief systems, and patterns and habits and so on.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Yeah. No, I really relate to that idea of that, what's, the presence alone. I think for me, it reminds me of, well, I have so many examples of that with, my own teachers, and there's a story that I've always liked. And maybe I'll share this briefly. This not about therapy, but it's about music. And I saw this a long time ago in a wonderful documentary about conducting. I think the series was called The Art of Conducting. And it was talking about, just literally the art of conducting classical music. And it sort of was kind of going through a history of some of the famous conductors. And one famous conductor is Furtwängler, and he was German, and sort of during World War II or around that time, and well known for, working with the Berlin Philharmonic and probably others, I'm not sure. But there was a sort of an interview with somebody who described this most amazing experience they had, which was that, so I think this was a violinist, and they were there getting ready for a rehearsal, and Furtwängler, the conductor, was not yet there, and so the orchestra was sort of doing a rough rehearsal. Maybe they had already tuned their instruments, and sort of this person was there playing their violin. I don't think that, I think it was still sort of in that phase when they're kind of sort of a little bit chaotic. People are just practicing their pieces, that they're not fully executing the song yet. And anyway, this woman who was describing this, she said, all of a sudden, something just changed. There was a change in the sound, and there was some sort of tonality coming through, and just something shifted, and I was so struck. And she said, and then 10 seconds later, she saw that Furtwängler, the conductor, had come in, but he hadn't come around the corner yet. And so then he came around the corner, and then, he came to join the audience. But in her description, it was as though, literally his presence was felt before he arrived, and that it already was influencing the quality of the sound. And so I've had many examples of that with therapeutic practitioners and martial arts and things where I've just come to believe it's the person's presence that carries so much of the interaction more than what they do or say. But I love that one example because there's something very tangible about it. So um, yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I like that example.
I love that story, and that's definitely the core of what I aim to teach in Internal Alchemy, to create a framework we can start to have these experiences free of dogma, free of what I want to teach you. You get to explore, and like you said, in a very tangible way, because many times when we hear stories about this, they feel very far out and esoteric, or, this is this and that. But to start to have these experiences in a tangible, rooted, grounded way, and that you start in a small sense, like with maybe not the largest life-changing experiences, or maybe you go there where we don't know what comes up, but that you start to build your experience or database, and this feels natural, and you can explain it, and you can reproduce it or create a scenario where, or a setting where this is likely to happen. I believe we're starting to go from what's called, supernatural, mystic, or, oh, this is your hidden powers. Or no, it's nothing. There's nothing hidden. It's natural. It's normal. It's what we already have. It's more dormant, if anything, I would say, inside of us, because we choose to use the brain intellectually very strongly. And I
Mhm.
believe this is really just about balancing yourself, right? It's kind of like when I look at using the intellectual mind, it's like all I do every day is like doing biceps curls. I have this big biceps, but the rest of the body can't sustain it. We need to wake up all the different parts of our body. So we're functional as a unit. And communication is supposed to be not just with words. And we see
Yeah,
that in TRU. We actually get to
yeah,
experience that. And with the other modalities that are being birthed around now, neurogenic
right.
integration, internal alchemy. So I think
Yeah,
it's extension of awakening those dormant natural sides to you. It's like using 1% of your capacity, and it's like, it's not supernatural, it's natural. You just
right,
haven't been taught how to use it. So let's
right.
wake that up and see what comes from there. That's really how I
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love that description, and I love the. You're right. I mean, there's too much out there that frames this as yes, extraordinary and supernatural, and um, but no, this idea that it's the most natural. It's intrinsic. It's our nature, and I think that feels to me a much more accurate and also grounded way of expressing that. So yeah, I really resonate there. Um, what else? Yeah, what else should we cover, Simba? What have we not touched upon?
We've gone through a lot. So when
Yeah,
when I do a workshop like this, since it will be a little bit different in person and online. In person, of course, we can touch them if people want, and consensual.
yeah,
There's a different kind of connection that can be made. So online, it will be a little bit different, of course, but a lot of it's going to be kind of going through different exercises to start to connect deeper with yourself. And also, something I'm working on is not coming from the conception of, or the idea of, this is tremors. What is it that's actually happening? Like, because that's usually what happens in theory. Okay, you're tremoring, it's the nervous system, and we explain it, and it's correct. I don't have any issues with that. But I
hmm
want to give the person the opportunity of not putting my experiences
a
or my
label.
ideas a label. I want to say there's energy, there's this, there's a lot of different cultures that explain it in different ways. Whatever it is, you can stop it in this way. That's how we make it safe. That's how we honor the theory legacy, but
Yep,
also to make it cultural appropriate, that you can explore it and explain it in your own language, in your own way that fits you and the crowd, the audience where you are at, and not just coming from this framework saying only talking all about the nervous system. And I
Right.
think that that becomes authentic because that becomes your expression of it. It's the same as when you do craniosacral therapy and you have, well, in our system, they call it the unwinding when the body starts to move. It's
Hmm.
not tremors. It's not really nervous system. A lot of people explain it in different ways, but frankly, no one really knows what it is,
Hmm.
right? And coming back to that essence of what is it? What is it that I'm actually
Right.
experiencing? And what happens when I become a witness and aware of that? There's an awareness moving my body. And what happens when I kind of start to work in concert and dance with it and don't come from an idea of what's happening? That's
Yeah.
a big part of what I want to teach in the
Yeah.
workshops. So doing some breathing exercises, working with the fascia, and then going into whatever we choose to call it, the movements, the
Yeah. Yeah.
changes, because then you can start to explore it from your own terminology, your own understanding, and it will become much more of your experience rather than me guiding you to an experience and then explaining what you experienced.
Yep. Yep. Mm, I love it. Um, Great. Well, all right. Well, Sim, I guess I feel a little bit complete with this. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel the energy, the cycle is kind of completed.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, I'm so glad we're beginning with this, with the live workshop, the online workshop in June. I'm excited just to be there. I'm just going to be a participant, so I get to explore and be in the space as well. So I'm looking forward to that, and having you participate with our community. The neurogenic integration community is interesting because uh, the core group came from people who've been tremoring together, many of us since for 5 years or more, because it kind of began during COVID era. And of course, some new people have come, and it's grown a little bit, but it's an interesting group because it's people who have done a lot, often who have explored. And so, what I always enjoy working with the neurogenic integration community is that to me, they're a little bit of a sophisticated audience, and most of them are not practitioners. They're not even trying to be. They are appreciators of this work. They when I mean they're not practitioners with others. I mean, some of them are, but mostly they're people who are just very interested in their own processes. And so I think you will enjoy this group as a good audience to bring your space holding to and lens.
Well, I'm honored to be invited, and I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of fun sharing experiences, and that's gonna be really fun to get to know your audience as well, your community, and yeah, I think it's nice to see different ways of practicing. I think it
Yeah,
enriches you and it just adds to your repertoire, to your experience base, and I think the more we can do that, the more
yeah.
everyone can grow. And I mean, one part of the training that I have that's optional is I have a group container that I teach with TRE, emotional freedom techniques, breath work. I teach separate modalities as well, like classes, like weekly classes online.
Hmm.
So an optional way when you do the theory or the internal alchemy training is to join this container, which we call the wellspring, where
Mm.
you have like weekly classes. So in your repertoire, like you were saying, even if you don't become practitioners in other modalities, you can experience working with yourself in different ways. And then when you bring that into your modality, you come from a different place. Like you said, they're connoisseurs, they're interested,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that is really what broadens your perspective and how you show up as a person or as a teacher or just your authentic expression of being yourself.
Nice. Cool. All right, Simba. Well, yes. Appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to being with you on June 18th.
Yeah, and if people want to know more, they can also follow me on Instagram, the Spirit Academy on the line. There are some things that I update there about this, and of course, Neurogenic integration, the workshop I will do for you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about that there as well. So, and you can
Perfect.
also, reach out to me, livingwiththespirit.com. It's a way you can reach out as well, and probably drop some links here afterwards so people can.
Yeah. We'll put all
Yeah.
the web links and information in the show notes and all the places. So yeah, people can easily connect with you.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you for this,
thank you.
and nice to get another one done.
That's it for today's episode. We hope you found inspiration and new insights into the power of neurogenic tremoring.
If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people interested in this transformative work.
And if you want to dive deeper, connect with us. Or to learn more about our sessions, courses, and upcoming trainings, head over to neurogenicintegration.com.